Mike, alcoholic.
Hi, Mike.
Glad to be here. Before we walked in, my buddy saw this field over here, and he's into boomerangs, and he was out there throwing it. I don't know if any of y'all saw him out there throwing it, and it's an amazing thing, and it really reminded me of one of our own that was into boomerangs. I don't know if y'all know the story about Bill W. doing the boomerang. It's unbelievable. He was, we have a very accomplished author. He was the first non-Aborigine to whittle a working boomerang, and he was such a overachiever, the story goes, that he finally whittled the last one out of the piece of wood off of his headboard, which is an amazing thing. And what it tells me is I'm like Bill in that once I put my mind to something, it is true what we always say, that an alcoholic's had a hold of something because he leaves claw marks on it, and he kept at it. And I look back at my history, and I know I sure did keep at the drinking, but I never quite could get it right. I think I had God speaking to me along the way, as we all do. I remember there was a little voice that said back in 1984, Mike, I just don't think it's a good idea to break in that house. And this is, I didn't take but $40. I knew the guy wasn't home. It was a guy I knew. But the point is clear, is that God was trying to talk to me then. But I was listening to something else. I was listening to, I won't say another God, but certainly another higher power. I would say the lower power in the form of drugs and alcohol. And it certainly led me astray, but I can't claim that I didn't know right from wrong. And I think that that's a good news for any newcomer that's here that has a problem or has a challenge, with getting step 2. I always like to share about, when it says on 55, where it talks about deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by things, but in some form it's there. That G-O-D, that good orderly direction that was there, I just need to unblock it and keep hearing it, and not just hear it, I need to heed it, right? Because I need to act on what I hear. I wish I had acted on what I heard before. But we say we don't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, and I would like to sound real spiritual and say there's nothing in my past that I wish hadn't happened, but that's just not true. But I'll use those as lessons that I don't want to repeat those things. I want to pay homage to whoever I hurt that I can't possibly ever make complete amends to, like some of these loved ones that I treated the worst. I want to make the living amends. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been into where people will say, well, I'm going to hurt them so bad, I'm going to stay sober for my kids or my parents, they're drunk in 3 weeks. That's a heck of a legacy, So when I say I want to make a living amends and stay sober to show the people I'm serious, not just as remorseful, I'm sorry, I'm writing a check. And so far, it's a check that my ass has been able to cash. But I was in the past, I was known to write checks couldn't cash. I would make boastful claims about what I was going to do. I'm going to quit for good, or I'm going to do this. I have seen the value in my promises may not be as boastful or bold, but the promises I make, I usually am able to keep them, unless something crazy comes up, And let's hope something crazy came up with the girl I'm seeing, because she didn't send me the text that I've been looking for. Good luck, be safe. So, I got that swirling around in my head. If you know what I'm talking about, on either side of the fence there, I'm not liking it. So we have things that happen to us in life. I'm not absolved of life's challenges just because I'm in recovery. That's my point. If you're new, I think it's important to say that, I can't claim that just because I got sober that I've had no challenges in recovery. 117 talks about, to me, the most realistic matching concept, because I think a lot of times newcomers will hear 68, match calamity with serenity, or 100 is say, follow the dictates and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world no matter what your present circumstances. recovery is not presently. I can't pray the right prayer and whatever challenge I'm going through just miraculously disappears. In Wives on 117, I think it's the most realistic matching concept. It says, many of the old problems will still be with you. There'll be ups and downs. I'll be learning to live. These workouts will be regarded as part of my education. I will not let them drag me down. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. And see, that's when I really need to see and look back that God has matched my calamity with serenity, but I've done my part. See, I'd like to say I just turn everything over, let Big G do it all, which is almost what they did to the third step, because the third step originally had care and direction, but they took out the word direction. And now it's no wonder that newcomers and people feel like, oh, I just need to let God do it all. But I do play a part in my recovery. And I think that's important to say. Faith without works is dead, to be sure, James 2. And of course, the whole book comes from the Bible. But the thing about it is that God's going to do for me what I can't do for myself, but He's not going to do for me what I can. And I think that's important to say, because there is some things that I can do. I can use some good common sense. Of course, the good common sense that I was lacking out there, right? The good common sense that Daniel had when he came out of the lion's den, right? Daniel came out of the lion's den. He didn't say, hey, fellas, let me go back in there and get my hat. I think I left my hat in there. He had some good common sense. He said, hey, look here, I don't need that hat. I ain't going back in there and tempt fate. See? So God expects me to use good common sense. And a good story that relates to me doing my part is one of the times that was the first time. There's always a first. You have firsts in recovery, FRSTS. You got to learn you got to play pool for the first time. You got to go, dance for the first time. Got to go to Florida for the first time. Go to the beach. I mean, that's a big deal if you were young like me when I got here. It always entailed doing a little sun worshiping on my drinking trip, if you know what I'm talking about. So I remember me and my buddy Jimmy, we wanted to go to the beach. We didn't have any money. And we wanted to go to the beach, and we didn't want to have to just sleep in the car or come back in one day, so I borrowed a tent from my dad. We're going to stay at the Gulf State Park campground. Back when Gulf Shores, there wasn't really nothing there. And the reason we picked Gulf Shores, and this is my point, is that when we thought about Florida, we thought about where? PC. Well, we all know PC is not the place to be. So I remember us thinking about it. We don't know if we want to go to PC, because that'd be like tempting Providence. It'd be kind of silly, kind of risky. So we decided to go to Gulf Shores. So we go to Gulf Shores, and this is back even before I even went to AA. I went to CA and NA early as a kid because there was young people there. My parents dropped me off in '87 at Jaffe, and there was all these old people there, and I was like, no, this is not happening at all. I remember, and I found some folks that were more my age, and I got to spend a few years until I wised up and went where I needed to be. Because, everybody has a grace period when they get here. The newness works for a while. We're hanging out with all the people. It's all new. We may find us a little girl to date or whatever. But I'm here to tell you that if you're, I'm here to report, not tell, that I need to work the steps, because my grace period is going to run out. And something in life is going to show up, a challenge. And if I don't have these coping mechanisms, I'm going to go right back to getting the promises from where I always got them. And some of you may have heard this, but I think it's important, because when I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. And when I got loaded, I had a whole attitude and outlook, new attitude and outlook upon life. And every one of those promises that we read, I got from alcohol in solid or liquid form. Now, my mind wants me to remember what it did for me, but it doesn't want me to remember what it did to me. Yeah. See, and that's the danger of this whole thing, because it wants me to remember that one time that I did something and the sky didn't fall. It doesn't want me to remember that it was much, much easier and much more frequent that I found myself a cop. And I'm not saying I'm some badass person. I'm just saying that, well, I think we can all say that I've never gotten arrested from working 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think that's important to say. I think my idea of excitement has been drastically revised. Sometimes life may not be as exciting or fun, but as we all know, I about had all the fun out there I could stand. To now the idea of pleasure comes from the absence of pain. And the continuing to come to meetings frequently keeps me in touch with that it's still kicking A out there, and keeps me, helping me remember what it did to me. And it keeps me on the beam. And the way I like to share it, and I haven't forgotten the Florida story, I'll just make a little detour and I come back. But, I need to make recovery the center of my wagon wheel. If I start making it a spoke, or I start wanting it to hang out on the edge, I'm in trouble. I'm just telling you. Because all things come from the recovery, right? Because I come in here with challenges that I think are my problems. No license. I didn't have a license for my first year, and I had to go retake the driving test and the written test. I remember studying that little book with the colored pictures. And I took it in a big old Delta 88. Try making that three-point turn in a big old land yacht, right? I pulled it off. You know the sound of the thing is making you turn it all the way. But, some of those memories of early recovery, all the memories in recovery, when I redo some of those firsts, when I have quality memories and quality accomplishments in recovery, I believe that I'm less liable to just throw it away. It's kind of like my first bicycle. When my parents bought me my first bicycle, it didn't cost me nothing. So what I do, I left it out in the rain. But the first time I had ownership interest in something, the first time I put effort into having something, it's only logical that we take care of it more when I have a stake in the deal. So in recovery, I've become a lawyer and a CPA and things like that. And I was talking with the Al-Anon speaker about how we miss school and what a large part of my early recovery it played, because it gave me that structure that I believe that we crave. We crave structure. I crave reward system, effort grade. And here you get reward system, because I'm able to look back on some of the ways that I thought when I was early in recovery and say, man, I really don't know what I was thinking now. I wasn't drunk. It's just that we, like the book talks about on 143, I think it is, says to get over drinking will take a transformation of thought and attitude. And it is a slow transformation. It doesn't happen in an instant. Just like our book talks about, a body badly burned by alcoholism doesn't often recover overnight, nor does twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. Sometimes it does take time to heal those bad ideas and insert it with good ones. So we went to Florida, we went to Gulf Shores, because we used some good common sense. We tried to play Daniel there. We didn't want to go back in there PC and get our hat. So we show up down there not knowing anything about, we certainly knew there was no meetings of that type down there. We didn't know of any. And this, of course, this is before cell phones, before Google. And we show up down there at the Gulf State Park campground, and I still remember the marquee, which the whole place is gone now. That hurricane a long time ago blew it away. It said AA convention this weekend. See, now we had not done that because it was all those old people, which now I guess I'm an old people. I don't think I look old as they looked, though. I don't know. I probably do. But my point of the whole story was, what was it about? It was about God does his part and I do mine. Now, what part did we do? We didn't get stupid and go to PC. God showed up and showed out and put a convention there that we couldn't possibly have known about. And the rest is history. And the lessons begin to build, if I'm willing to look for them. I can look for something to be upset about. I'm not going to be consumed by old girl not sending me that text. She better have a good reason. I'm just saying. 'Cause I will put one on the road, okay? Make no mistake about that. I'm not totally spiritual at all times. But I will say this, that God was speaking to me, and if you're new, don't use that as a reason to stay away. I think, Bill W. actually said it best when he tells his story, and you can go Google this, because you have Google. The night Dr. Bob dies, he does a great speech where he talks about Ebby coming to visit him. And what's in the book is Ebby says, "I've got religion." Everybody's seen that. But what's underneath the surface is what was said after that. He says, "I've got religion." And Bill said, "What brand of religion is it?" And Ebby said, "It's the religion of common sense." You can go listen to it. You can go check it out. It comes from back when the Oxford group would read this book by a guy named Peabody. You can go look this up too, The Common Sense of Drinking. But even more than that, what it was a simple common sense idea that I've got a God that's going to forgive me for what I've done, but expects me to live differently. See, there's that duality. There's that I play my part, and I can say there's a clean slate. Because I don't know about y'all, when my parents made me go to, sit in church still while they're singing, bringing in the sheaves. I mean, it was the hardest thing on earth to sit still. And you better sit still. I'm just going to throw that out there. And the God of my childhood is still circling the First Baptist Church, striking down sinners. To think it was to do it, and as one of our old timers, Sam, says, okay, well, to think it was to do it, okay, I'll just do it till I need glasses. I won't go any farther than that. Some of you may get that. So the thing about it is that I got a God that forgives me now. I've just got to really get that in my head if I'm new. I'll tell you, the God's little voice, he just spoke to me about a month ago. I was riding my motorcycle. I like a little motorcycle. I saw a couple of motorcycles when I pulled in. Who owns the motorcycle? There was some fat boys out there. Yeah, you got one of them? Man. Yeah, I like some chrome on that thing. I just got me some new chrome foot pegs. Real proud of them. There's always something new you can get. It don't matter what it is. It's a chrome dilly-dag on the thing, and it costs $50 for a little piece. But you got to have it. You got to have it. And that's what's so wild. You get these little things in recovery, and I'll say, look, I was spending that in a night. At least I can pull on my little chrome piece, my little choke lever, that costs $50. I pull on that thing every time I ride it, and I got that thing. And can't nobody take it away from me but me. Just like my schooling. I got a vested interest. I got an ownership interest in my stuff that God's enabled me to accumulate a couple of things. I got a couple of nice hats and some sunglasses and a couple of pairs of watches and a couple of cars, and they're not the newest, but I own them. And if I don't make the payment, can't nobody take them away. See, folks like you know the value in that. Sometimes I'm around folks that they got to have the newest and the best, and they say, look what I got. That's my car. I hate to break it to them. That ain't your car. That's the bank's car, killer. And for the next 80 months. And miss a payment, big boy. So whatever on that. And I'm not saying having new stuff is bad. I'm just saying it's just the way my dad raised me, I guess. They saved mason jars and bread bag ties and pieces of wire and bolts and buckets and things, and I never made fun of it. He made me help him fix things, because he fixed Phantom jets in Vietnam, or was it Korea? I think it was, whatever it was. And he fixed jets and stuff, and he was a stern guy. We were in the garage one time. Anyway, they gave me the house. And now, whenever I go downstairs to fix something, I look in that bucket. And I always find it. The lesson of my father that I never did get, that's part of that transformation. I see the value that I couldn't possibly have seen now, that I couldn't see it then. But we all have voices from our childhood. Like my dad, we were downstairs one time working on something that he always made me watch him work on so I would know later. And I was like, I hate this. Now I can fix things. And I'm going to tell you, a guy that can fix things is about as rare as a woman that can cook these days. I'm just going to break it down like a shotgun. I mean, you're lucky if they can heat something in a microwave. I mean, they ain't like mom, okay? And you know the kind of mom I'm talking about. And you know the kind of dad I'm talking about. They're still married. We were down in the garage, and I don't know what I did. I knocked something over. I don't know what I did. I wasn't paying attention. That was the common refrain that he would say. But I knocked something over. We're talking about voices from the past. And it's not just alcohol and drugs talking to us. I knocked something over and he said, son, don't you know you fuck up more than you fix? And I remember hearing that at 10 years old. And it went through my skull and bounced around in there for the next 40 years. You know, and that's probably why I spent so much time in school to prove that I didn't F up more than I fixed. It's probably a lot of the reasons that I did, the voices from the past that I took as fact, that were probably just him a little upset and said the wrong thing at the wrong time. He really didn't mean that. I certainly hope that he doesn't mean it. I've certainly proved it wrong, and he certainly doesn't act like that I'm that way now. Now that I just had to sit with him for 3 weeks in the hospital when he nearly died. The fact that we can give back to those people. Now, I know there's bad parents, and I understand. But the things that we can give back to the ones that did for us, I can never repay. And that's part of what I'm referring to about that check, writing that check, and on a daily basis trying to show them not only that I don't F up more than I fix, which is, I think, long been proven a lie, but it's still stuck with me. My point is, if you're new, the voices from the past don't define us. I think that's the lesson. That we are not consigned to be what we saw, maybe as a kid, what we were told. And believe me, I've been in enough meetings to know I would take my parents over some of the ones I've heard about. So the point is that if you're new, you're not consigned to repeat what you saw. Let's say he beat your mom. I mean, that's a regular one. You're not consigned to repeat that, because often we hear that we're just destined to repeat this stuff. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's a lie. With this program, it throws all of that out the window. For the first time, I can choose the direction of my life with this program. The other day, I heard God speaking to me. I was on my motorcycle. I always come back to where I was going. I was on my motorcycle. If you're on a motorcycle, you know you get out of the house and you look around and you go, I see a cloud, but it looks clear. You want to ride, and it overrides your good common sense because it said, there's a cloud there. You don't want to get caught out because you know it feels like a shotgun hitting you in the face when you're riding. Plus, you got to wipe off all the spots off your chrome, so you don't knowingly choose to go out. But I did. So I got out there, and sure enough, I got halfway where I'm at, and it's thundercloud, and it's like I see the wall of water coming at me, and I'm on the little interstate. Which one doesn't matter, you may not know. But I see it coming. And you know, I got my short sleeves on. So I said, you know, this sucks. Here it comes. This sucks. And a little voice said, hey, Mike, slow down. But I said, I'm going straight. I got this. So I go straight. I hit the rain. It's raining. Seriously raining. And there's a slight curve. And I feel the back tire just go, and it caught. And then another one moved about an inch, but it's enough to feel it. And it felt like a million miles if you ride a motorcycle. You know what I'm talking about. It moved, and you're going, ah! And then it caught. And then all of a sudden, what was me going, this sucks. All is not right with the world. I slowed down and hunkered down and was going like very slow. And I've never been so glad to be wet in my entire life. And I was just enjoying every drop because, see, I was invited to see the alternative for just a moment. And I believe that is a big reason that we keep coming back, because I get to sometimes see a glimpse of the alternative. And all of a sudden, whatever problems or challenges I came in there with seem very small in comparison. I've heard a lot of people say, and I don't know if I'm supposed to end at 5 because I didn't start at 4 or how that works, but it feels like I hadn't been speaking but a minute anyway. Y'all mind if I go on a little bit longer? I mean, I think I started, at 4:30 or something? I don't know. But anyway, a lot of times we say we're not responsible for our, disease, or it's in the DNA or something, or they'll say it's hereditary. That's the word. This is hereditary. Well, I mean, my parents didn't smoke or drink. I don't know whose hereditary it was. Some distant uncle? I mean, whatever. My point is that I need to take an ownership interest in what brought me here. Because step 1 in the 12 and 12 really says it best. It said, I had to admit that glass in hand, I warped my mind into such a state of destructive drinking that only an act of providence could remove it. It said, I did it. Dad didn't do it. It wasn't the fact that he said, you F up more than you fix, even though that's a true story. It could have lended itself to a low self-esteem that made me need to have it bolstered by alcohol in solid or liquid form. But my point is this, is I have to take not just an ownership interest in my recovery, but I've got to take ownership interest in what brought me here. In other words, I've got to drop the word blame from my thought and attitude. Because I come in here blaming it on everybody. I'm completely white as snow. But then, as you all know, who have been here for a while, you work the 4th step, and I realize a lot of those things were fancied. What does it say on 66? Fancied or real, these have the power to kill. So I find out, man, I had myself thinking that I didn't do nothing wrong in this situation. And the fact of the matter is just like on 62, that if I look back, I made a decision based on self that later placed me in a position to be hurt. And then all of a sudden, it's no wonder that a lot of those fancied resentments go away, because they weren't real to start with. I told myself the lie over and over. Joe and Charlie call it the resentment replay machine. Have any of y'all ever heard of say, boy, every morning I'd tell myself all these stories, and I'd push that button, and every time I told it, I get less to blame, and they get more to blame. And the next thing you know, after telling the stories over and over, I've done nothing wrong, and I'm a victim. Well, I've got to realize that glass in hand. So the thing about it is that I don't know why, but I had an addictive personality early on. And it certainly had nothing to do with them drinking or smoking, because we lived in a trailer when I was this age, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And man, I hated living in the woods. And I think it was because some of you are old enough to remember this movie that was out back then called Grizzly. Man, Grizzly scared me to death. And then every crinkle of the leaf was Grizzly out there. And let me tell you something, I couldn't get up out of that trailer, and I couldn't get up out of Springville fast enough. And I had nothing to do with it. But when they were ready to move to the city, I was like, count me in, like I had a vote. But my point is that, old Grizzly was out there. But the point is that when I lived in that trailer, we're talking about having an addictive personality early on. I don't know if any of you remember. Well, you got football cards these days with gum in it. You can still go to the store. Back then, it was called Wacky Pack stickers. And it would make fun of different brands, like Tide laundry detergent have a picture of a frog. It said Toad. Every one of them was a funny name or whatever. Anyway, so you'd buy it for 5 cents a pack, and it was my first opportunity to experience inflation back then, because the 5% pack went to 10, and I used to get a quarter a week allowance, and I used to be able to get 5 packs, and now I could only get 2. And I was like, this is no good. This is no good. No good. So anyway, If you know cards, you know at the bottom right-hand corner of any card you collect, it's got like 2 of 200. There's a set of these things. It doesn't matter what you collect. There is a set of these cards. It could be Pokemon, whatever it is, there's a set. And even as a kid, never took a substance in my life. I was absolutely obsessed with getting the entire set. I had to have it. I had to have it. I'd have 10 of one. But I'm going to have me that whole set. And then when I would get the set, all of a sudden I would feel all right with the world. Oh, and it would feel good for a minute. And you know what I'd do? I'd put a rubber band around it and I'm on to the next set. And that is exactly what it's like without the substance, right? I was absolutely gripped. And the moment I achieved whatever it was, whatever I used to search for, that perfect feeling, I was always chasing it. I could never get there. You know what I'm talking about. So I've got my toy chest from my childhood with a bunch of stacks of things with rubber bands around them. I still have them. I still have my first ball glove that's so small it's not even funny. It's a little blue Franklin glove, you know. But when I see those stickers, which I don't open that thing much anymore, I've always said I would give it to my son, but I've never gotten married because I tell you, I grew up in the program, literally almost, and I've never seen anybody hardly say anything good about it. They're either on their 5th ex-wife or they're fighting with the ex over the kids, and it sounds so terrible, and I've grown up with it, and I was like, that is the last thing on earth I want to do. And then I see my parents, who I've never seen argue, who have been married since the rapture, it's 53 years now. Nobody stays married anymore. Well, maybe around here, but I'm just saying, that's a perfect example that can never be met. It's like that perfect drunk you're looking for. You never can see it. It's like the unicorn. So I'm hearing all this stuff, man, I don't want to do that. And then I'm gauging everything by this perfect example. Nobody ever argues. So whenever I get with a girl, the first argument, I think, oh, well, this ain't meant to be. Holla. I can almost tell you right now, it's skates, okay? It's skates. Still ain't happening. I've been waiting on it to light up while I'm standing here. She's making a grave error. She's losing out. I'm just telling you. I know this. So the thing about it is that I had my addictive personality from Jump Street. And, one other thing from my childhood. Usually if I do a talk, I don't like, I hear so many people talk about their childhood with so many facts that have nothing to do with what we're here for. Stickers has everything to do with it. And one more story from my childhood. It's not really a story, but it's a fact that has everything to do. Because Dr. Bob, in his story, talked about he was an only child, and I'm an only child. And he said, I was an only child, and it engendered the selfishness that played such an integral part in bringing about my alcoholism. That was what he said. And I find that to be absolutely true. Because if I'm an only child, guess what revolves around me? The world. I don't have to share my toys. I don't have to share my parents. Everything is about me. On Mother's Day and Father's Day, I remember asking my dad, hey, when's Mikey's Day? And he said, and this is absolutely, because every day's Mikey Day. And let me tell you something. Every day is Mikey Day. And I got to be careful. Or I'll think it's every day's Mikey Day too. And I won't want to do nothing for nobody. I got mine. You get yours. But you know what? What recovery tells us is that that's not the way to be. That I got to give away to keep. You can't keep what you have unless you give it away. Which is very counterintuitive. Try that with your money. But anyway. Except with tithing. But I've yet to get it back tenfold. I've still been looking. But the thing about it is that when I think about my childhood, those are the two things. And what could I say? I could say, well, see, I'm selfish because I'm an only child, and that's just the way it is. Principles for personalities. We are so clever. We will use these statements and flip the script on the statement and use it against people. It's progress, not perfection, as a reason to do nothing. I know you've heard these people. Progress, not perfection. Dude, you don't do nothing. You ain't even made no progress. Principles for personalities, and they use it as a club over your head so they can act stupid. But that's not what these phrases mean, are they? See, that's why I really need to stay in tune and stay around people who are aware of what the book says and aware of what the book means. Maybe some stories underneath the surface, like the boomerang story, which is very illustrative of our ability to accomplish anything, especially in employers where it talks about, I have two alcoholic workers, they do the work of 5. I mean, this is very good stuff. I believe this is true, that we are some of the most industrious people on the planet. I mean, if you look at page 21, where most people always talk about, here's the guy that's been puzzled with Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And he talks about he's more or less always insanely drunk. And the entire meeting is always about how we mess up. And it's like, it's almost the negativity is catching. Everybody tries to one-up each other's stories. No, I drank up 3 houses. I got you beat. Okay, buddy, you can have that award. Yeah. I mean, what kind of award are we trying to get here?
Hell yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, believe I've been to all the meetings. Believe I know all the tricks. I've seen all the ways it can go. And now that I'm an old timer, I'm like, I'm the one that's supposed to get this back on track because it's off the wheels. And the point of the matter is, if you look at 21 and you count it up, there's more good about us than bad. It says he's fast thinking and imaginative. He's one of the finest fellows in the world. He has special skills and abilities. He has a fine family and a fine outlook upon life. He has a great career ahead of him. All those things are on that page, but they're conveniently overlooked because we get so comfortable talking about war stories. And I think that cycle really, in my observation, needs to be broken because we can come by it honestly too, because when we hear somebody say, and it's usually at the beginning of a talk, he talks about, I'm supposed to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Okay. Now, what do most people hear when they hear that statement? I know what they hear. They say, what it was like, war story. What happened, the worst war story on earth, and then what it's like now, 5 minutes at the end of the talk if you're lost, because they done got caught up in the drunk-a-log. I know you know what I'm talking about. But here's what's interesting about this, and it took me a long time to figure this out. This is true. There's no way to avoid this. What it was like was the war stories. What it's like now is now, right? What happened is working the steps. So all of a sudden, that phrase turns from 2/3 war stories. Now it's 2/3 the solution, because if what happened is what bridged the gap between then and now, then war stories is 1/3.
Amen.
So I don't even, see, when I tell my story, I don't even talk about war stories. What? Am I going to brag to you? Am I going to impress you? What you have to realize that I ain't hung around here for a lifetime for no reason.
Hell yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, here's the thing. I tried to quit for good and wasn't able to. And what I call that's the Alcoholics National Anthem. I'll never do it again. Anybody ever sang that song and drank again behind it? I'll never do it again. All right, so I sang the Alcoholics National Anthem. I'll never do it again. I think I got that from Joe Charlie. I can't claim that. I mean, but I forget because I listened to them so long ago. I got the original Joe and Charlie tapes. I'm talking about before 2 or 3 guys died. I mean, this was the original 2 guys, which I highly recommend if you can even find. I got it on cassette, which I can't listen to because none of my cars have a cassette anymore. Some of y'all know about them 8-tracks. I got a 45 with Sammy Davis singing Candyman in the top of my closet, okay? So if anybody wants it. 45s, man. We've come a long way, man, from having to drive home as fast as you can to see if she left you a voicemail, and it wasn't even called a voicemail because you had to check that little cassette. Now it's instant access. That means there's no excuse, baby girl. We know this. Don't be hollering at me if the phone went dead. Don't be hollering nothing. It's TikTok, and it gets worse every minute because I like her. And here's what's interesting. it's shown me that I still have feelings. I thought I was devoid of feelings when I got here. So I don't look forward to opportunities where I get my feelings hurt. You know, I'm acting a little mad. It's because I'm a little hurt, isn't it? That's what we do. My feelings are hurt. I don't like it at all. But what this program, and this is a great example, I didn't want to belabor this, but this is a great example and a great segue to be able to talk about what one of the benefits of the program. Because see, when we talk about 2/3 of the solution, I like to talk about how I got out of the ditch and what it's like to be out of the ditch, because y'all have heard enough about describing the walls of the ditch. So in this example, okay, my feelings are hurt. I'm disappointed. I've invested time. But also, what do I have? I have self-esteem and self-worth. Right? I ain't gonna be no chump. You can't go do me any old kind of way. There was a day when that wasn't true. I would compromise everything I stood for just so you would be my friend, just so she would stay with me. You know, I learned some lessons in recovery. I mean, you know, we have a past of the past that Henry Ford on 124 talks about is it can be our greatest asset. But see, I have a past in recovery too now, which you begin to accumulate if you stay here. And one of the things that I remember learning, and it's probably why I am so resolute about this situation, because even in recovery, I learned a valuable lesson about what's my serenity worth? Because I had a girl that was living with me. I mean, this ain't about relationships, but this could be about friendships. This could be about a job, a boss doing you any old kind of way. So I moved her in because she was absolutely beautiful. But the problem was what my parents always said that I never really believed. Because I've always liked what I saw in the mirror. I never believed it when Mom would say, beauty's only skin deep. I never believed that shit until I moved her in. And she lived there for a length of time. And the insane jealousy for no reason. I'm not talking about page 70, did you unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? I'm talking about no reason. But it's something in their head, and you can't convince them otherwise. The volatility. Some people just want somebody to beat the shit out of them. I never would do it. She'd throw cell phones. I mean, I'm like, man, this is not cool. But I stayed with it because of what other people thought when I showed up at the meeting. I stayed because of what the payoff was. There was a payoff. A little. I'm going to tell you, toward the end, that payoff scared me to death because I did not want to have a kid with this person. But when I got out of that, and we talked about smoking with somebody, and if you're new, I don't quit smoking. I tell everybody, don't quit smoking until you get 5 years. I'm just going to tell you, because you got to have something. Coffee and cigarettes is all we got left. I remember this guy, and I think sometimes AA meetings need to be smoking. It only makes sense to me. When I grew up, when you come in and the smoke is getting so thick, you got a duck to come in the door. You open the door, we're billowing out. And I never felt more at home in my life. Now you can't hardly find a smoking meeting. But I used to smoke. Didn't start smoking until I came in recovery. I used to smoke. This was in 2000. And it was time to ask her to leave. It was tough. Don't think it was easy. And I said, you have to, and my dad told me what to say. He said, you got to tell her she's got to make other arrangements. I'll never forget that. You have to make other arrangements. Yeah, that went over well. I'm telling you. But the point is that when she was driving down the street with the BMW I had put in her name, and the U-Haul full of the stuff, I sat down and I remember telling myself, I get to sit and watch TV and I don't have to have an argument. And all of a sudden that had value. And I haven't smoked a day since then. That was November 20th, 2000. I'll never forget it, that I put them down that day. And the thought came to me, what's your serenity worth? And it was like, and it's not till we come out of, whether it be coming in recovery or coming out of a volatile situation while in recovery, and the opportunity to stay sober through it. Because on 63, it talks about, take away my difficulties so victory over them will bear witness to those that I would help. That's what bears witness, getting through something and staying sober. Crashing and burning at the first sight of trouble and getting drunk don't bear witness to nothing. You feel what I'm saying? It's the getting through the challenge and coming back on the other side and sharing with you the lesson I learned. That bears witness. So it wasn't till I got out of that adrenaline pumping, fight or flight, and when we come in recovery, we're like that. We don't realize, some of us, how much of a toll drinking and drugging is taking on us, or this situation was taking on me, until I sat there quietly and didn't have to fight for about 4 or 5 days. And then I realized I was on a razor's edge, on thin ice, because I realized how spiritually weak I was once the adrenaline calmed down. And I realized I had been taken to the very edge with all this business that I willingly stayed in. Because why? King baby, my selfishness, what I'm getting out of it. So glass in hand, her in hand. I warped my mind into such a state of destructive living. This is in recovery. And I dang near didn't escape from it. But I didn't drink over this. And now, and I very rarely share this story. It's not, but I was able to tie it to something about recovery. I hope you see the lesson I was trying to tie it to. But I think what made me think of the story was missing the red flags. Because a guy, and whether that be out there drinking, I'm missing the red flags. God was trying to tell me before I broke in the house. He was trying to tell me. I didn't listen. This guy that's not with us anymore, and your motorcycle guys, you can get it. You were like, really? Wow, dude, you just won the lottery. This guy had a Harley. He wrecked it. He had Harley jackets, Harley belts, Harley chaps, Harley helmet, all of it. And he met me and I got it. I gave him $30 for the whole lot. Now, I still have the jacket. He's not with us anymore, but I will tell you this. Even though Ricky is his name, Ricky. God, the names just blend. If you're old timer, you know. You know the faces, but the names sometimes. He got me better than anybody's ever got me. And I'm pretty sharp, okay? He put me in my place better than anybody ever has, I swear. Because after a little time had gone by with old girl, and it's just like working the 4-step, we start to entertain the idea that maybe I may have played a part in this. And I'm feeling so great about it too. I'm acknowledging maybe I did something, It's like I was so proud when I went to my grandmom and said, guess what, grandmom, I got 60 days sober. She says, so what? I got 80 years sober. Go in there and get me some sweet tea. Man, I'm telling you, they don't know who I think I am. So anyway, I'm talking to dude, and I say, maybe there was one red flag. And he says this, and this in my life, this goes down in infamy as the end-all, be-all of putting me in my place. I'll never forget it. I said, maybe there was one red flag. And I got to stand over here to show you what he did because it was so perfect. Maybe there was one red flag. And he said, bitch, you was like a skier, downhill skier going past them red flag. Shh, 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 shh. He had me. See, and that's what it is. I got to be out of the war zone to look back and go, man, I skied past so many red flags, it wasn't even funny. Right? But what was lacking was self-worth that I have now, hopefully. And the ability to see, I'm worth more than this. And, you know, that's an important thing. You know, when I think about, let me cover 6 and 7 real quick, I think. We talked about 4 and 5, sort of. We talked about 1, we talked about 2 when I started, the little voice. 3 is a decision to, you know, go on with the rest of the steps. But I like what 35 and the 12 and 12 talks about. It explains it better. If you really want to explain it good to a newcomer, this is what I use. It talks about on 35 and the 12 and 12, it has an every man, woman, and child without knowing it made a beginning on step 3 when they come in here, because they're turning their will and their life over to the care and direction of Alcoholics Anonymous in regards to the alcohol problem. You know, I mean, what a great poetic way to say, without even knowing it, you knew you were coming here for a solution. How about give this solution a chance? And just saying you want to do the solution is not giving the solution a chance. That's just deciding. We need to get on into the steps. That's the turning. That's the turning. So 6 and 7, you know, I think a lot of people, and I'll end up after this. I don't want to go into the amends, which I did have to go back and make amends to that guy for breaking in his house. I'll go ahead and tell you the script that I made up that comes out of the book that I used too. Left them speechless. So if you want to do an amends, to leave them speechless where there's nothing left to say. Because see, they're looking for us to come in and say, I'm sorry, so they can say, I know you are. They're looking for us to say, it wasn't me, dog, I was drunk. That's pawning it off on the stuff. They're going, it sure did look like you, fool. You know, they're looking for us to come in there and go, you know, I'm sorry, but let's talk about what you did. Trap number 3, trapdoor Carol Merrill, it's been busted. Now you got to go make amends for a messed up amends. So here's the script. Worse like a champ. They're sitting there, mouth open, mouth dropped. They're trying to figure out what you just said. You hadn't fallen into any of the traps. And that's when it's time to exit stage left. I'm working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not going to be able to stop drinking until I clean up the wreckage of the past. I was selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate, and I wasn't thinking of your feelings when I broke in your house and took money from you. And here's the money I took from you. And I'll never forget that guy, because he said, I'm only going to take $20, because 20 was more back then than it is now, but whatever. It could have been 120. But you see my point. Even our book talks about we don't want to kid ourselves about values. So he says, I'm only going to take 20 of the 40 because that was drug money anyway. I'm fixing to go into treatment for cocaine. Can you help me? I'll never forget it. It turned me admitting to him I broke in his house and all the anger that he could have exhibited if I had made a mistake. Falling into the traps. It turned it all the way around, and he saw something had changed. Because people like us don't talk that way. Now, I wish I could tell you the dude is still sober. He went to treatment and I've worked with him and all that. No, he ain't with us and he ain't sober, and it don't matter. The point is, that's what happened. He could not or would not. But going to make amends, you know, for some scary things, I think is important. I can't tell anybody what to do. But when I think about 6 and 7, I've got an analogy, and I'll end with this because I think it's important. I see a lot of people getting caught up in 6 and 7 and staying there forever, thinking it's forever thing. And I had no idea what I was going to talk about when I started, to be honest with you. I really didn't. Okay, we're getting close to time. But I like the direction it's taken. I do. I feel good about what we've talked about. And I feel like I haven't left anything out. And I'm going to tell you, which I can be guilty of, being such a, I have a photographic memory, being such somebody who just quote paint, you know. Sometimes I don't share about myself enough. And I think I've shared some things about myself today, which I don't do all the time. Because it makes me vulnerable. And right now I'm feeling vulnerable. So I'm feeling vulnerable, and it made me share about myself. So it's a good thing that she didn't. You're benefiting from her not sending because I shared something about myself that I've been told over and over. Mike, you need to share about yourself more, Mike. I think it would be much more effective. That's another way of saying, dude, what you're doing is not working good. You need to share some stories about you. And 87 talks about it, said, we become more efficient, not burning up energy foolishly. You know, I need to be efficient. I need to try to be more efficient. So 6 and 7 is like, okay, if I'm sick, and you can use this. This actually is pretty good. You know, another man 2,000 years ago told every story by analogies. And it was just a great way to tell stories. So if I'm sick and I feel like there's something wrong with me, but I'm going to put off going to the doctor because I'm afraid of what he might say. But I finally go, and he does all the tests, and he sits me down in his office, and he says, sure enough, Mike, you're eat up. You got something wrong with you, buddy, and it ain't looking good. The prognosis is dire. No, the diagnosis is dire, but the prognosis is good if you do certain things. Prognosis means what's the outlook if you do the regimen of medicine. Diagnosis is what's wrong with you. So your diagnosis is dire, but your prognosis is good if you're willing to do these treatments. And of course, I say, sure, I'll do it. Here's the $64,000 question. When I leave the doctor's office and walk out the door and the sun hits me in the face, has anything changed? No. Nothing has changed. All that happened is I was made aware of my sickness. I was made aware of how serious it was. That's 6. I'm acknowledging that I see from 4 and 5 that I'm very ill and I got more problems than just alcohol. And then in 7, I'm saying, sure, I'll take the medicine, doctor. But when I'm 6 and 7 and I'm done with 7, we have then completed step 7 on 76. Nothing has changed because 6 and 7 is nothing more than a realization, a question. What the turning is after 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I get the motivation to live differently in 10, 11, and 12 from having to go make them amends that are scary as heck. Because if I didn't have to make the amends, I'd think I got away scot-free. And why do I need to change? I'm telling you, this thing is put together like a maestro. This is like a miraculous thing. That's why I know God's hand was in this. No dude with 2 years could have wrote that book. Are you kidding me? Hell, I got a PhD, I got a doctor and a postdoctoral and 2 masters. I still have to look up words. I mean, not really anymore because I've dang near looked them all up. But my point is that I've had to look up words. So when I hear people, it's written in a 6th grade level, I'm here to break that down like a shotgun. No, it ain't. I've had to look up plenty of words in that book. And I highly suggest that you do too. Because I've missed the meaning a lot of times. So what is 6 and 7? It's so quick, it's not even funny. Because I realize what's happened to me. And I'm saying that I'm willing to do something, but I have not yet done anything yet. The doing comes later. And the most important page, obviously, is on 12 and 12 on 65, where it says, in no case does God render us white as snow and keep us this way without our cooperation. And then it defines entirely ready at the bottom of that page where it says, entirely ready is nothing more than an attitude. I'm willing to aim toward the very best I can be or can know. It's saying, what do you want to shoot for, Mike? When you were in school, did you shoot for an A or did you shoot for a C? I guarantee you, if you go to school and you shoot for an A, you're guaranteed to pass. You may not make that A, but you're going to pass. If you shoot for a C, it's a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get. I ain't going to show up for class. I ain't going to do this and do that. You see my point? So what the AA program is saying, let's raise our eyes, and this is how it's raise our eyes toward perfection and be willing to walk in that direction. I may never get there, but I've got to really shoot for it. It's saying shoot for the stars. And it's already said that we're the most industrious people. We can accomplish things that, unbelievable because of what we've been through. So I just wanted to throw the little 6 and 7 story in the doctor's office. I think it's very important because I see a lot of people acting like 6 and 7 is a lifetime matter when it's like this. And now let's get on with the rest of it. So let me recap about what I've said. I always try to recap. I think we started off talking about the boomerang and how fortunate we are to have a power driver and somebody that really stuck to his guns that wrote our book. And the parallel is that we were like that. We would put our mind to anything and we can accomplish anything. I sure did do it with the drinking, and I know if you're new, you can do it with the recovery. You've got the energy necessary. It can be accomplished. One day at a time. You never have to drink again for the rest of your life. The Florida story, it talked about how I need to use some good common sense, and God does his part, and I do mine. I think that's really important. Listening to the little voice that was always there, outside the house and right there on that motorcycle when I went into the rain, and how I had a transformation. I thought I had a bad day, and then once I realized I wasn't going to skid out of control, and I saw how close I was so glad to be wet. My attitude was adjusted. The voices from the past, we do not have to live out what we were told as a child with this program. I do not F up more than I fix. I've proved that. I don't have to be what I saw. Thank goodness I saw more good than bad. We talked about 6 and 7. We talked about the amends, the script. Very important. Not falling into the traps. I think that's absolutely crucial. Fall into them traps on an amends and see what happens to you. So anyway, I've talked long enough. We're looking at 1 hour total, which is about right. And I wanted to say thank you to Joe, Jeff, and Barbara for asking me to come. And what a great thing this has been, and what a great place y'all have. That little meeting place over there, that little room is so cool. And it's so nice that they don't charge. I mean, you know, people more and more these days they want to have a place that people can go, especially with all this opioid business or anything. But I always end with the same thing, and I think it's crucial to end with this because it's in the 12th step itself. And I usually end with this every time I share. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and I'll pass.